The sun had barely cleared the high-rise skyline when Amina stepped into the cacophony of Lekki Market. Stalls stretched endlessly under patchwork tarps, each vendor hollering prices. Tomatoes, fresh. Pepper, hot as fire. Ava porridge, just cooked. Her tote bag, half full of plantain and palm oil, swung against her hip as she wove through the crowd. "Good morning, Auntie," called Mama Funk, pressing a ripe yam into Amina's hand. "For you, special price, just today." Amina laughed, tucking the yam inside her bag. "Thank you, Mama Funk. You spoil me." She moved on, eyes drawn to the shimmers of fabric hanging from metal racks, bright ochre prints, flowing chiffons. Amina needed a new wrapper for her cousin's wedding next week. She paused at a purple and gold design, fingering the glossy cotton. "Sweet choice, my dear," the fabric seller purred. "Perfect for your complexion." Amina's lips curved. "I think so too. I'll take 2 yards. As the seller measured, Amina's phone chimed. She glanced at the screen, a message from Chaik, running late. "Meet me at the fish stalls." She tucked the fabrics under her arm and headed deeper into the market, anticipation warming her chest. She found him by the dried fish stand, Chaik, tall and confident in a crisp white shirt, examining Gary sacks. He turned, eyes bright. "Sorry I'm late," he said, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "Traffic was murder." Amina smiled, bumping his shoulder. "It's fine. I've been shopping. Look at this fabric." He studied the wrapper speculatively. Then, with a sudden shift in tone, he shook his head and laughed, sharp, discordant. "Why are you always such a show-off? You look, I don't know, like you're trying too hard." Her brow creased. Before she could finish, his gaze flicked downward and his mouth twisted into a cruel grin. He raised his voice. "Your private part smells so bad in public." Time stopped. Vendors froze mid-sale. Shoppers turned, mouths agape. Amina's heart slammed against her ribs. The words hung in the humid air, more stinging than pepper. "Chaik, what did you just say?" she managed, voice trembling. He chuckled, as if his insult were a joke. "You heard me. Smells bad. Bet no one wants to get close." Amina's cheeks burned. She dropped the fabric, bright ochre spilling across the dirt floor like wounded birds. Fingers shaking, she backed away. "Stop it. This isn't funny." But he turned his back and walked off, arms swinging, as though she were nothing more than an amusing inconvenience. Whispers rippled through the market. "See, she always was proud." Maybe he's right. Amina's vision blurred. She sank onto an overturned crate, chest heaving. The taunts chased her like hounds. "Smells bad, smelly girl." Tears burned behind her lids. All around, the market's vibrant life carried on, but for her, the world had narrowed to that one devastating moment. Night fell over Victoria Island in smudged strokes of neon and exhaust haze. Amina trudged home along dimly lit streets, tote bag heavy with yams and bruised pride. Her apartment door swung open, empty, quiet. She dropped her groceries and sank onto the single sofa. Heart still pounding, she replayed Chaik's words. Her phone buzzed. A message from Zara, her best friend since secondary school. "At my place. Come over." Amina frowned. She'd been ignoring Zara's calls all evening. Why would Zara reach out now? With trembling fingers, she opened WhatsApp. Dozens of unread texts. "Zara. Hey girl. Miss you. Amina." "Zara, call me. Urgent." No missed call logs. But something pressed her to reply. She typed, "What's up?" Seconds passed. Then, "Can't talk. Come." Amina grabbed her jacket and phone, keys jingling. She hurried out into the night breeze, dread pooling in her stomach. 10 minutes later, she stood on Zara's balcony, overlooking the Lagos Lagoon's black mirror. Zara opened the door, cheeks pale. "Amina," Zara whispered, stepping aside. "I didn't know how to tell you." Amina's heart lurched. "Tell me what?" Zara's eyes filled. She swallowed. "Chaik, he left. With me." It felt as though the ground had dropped away. Amina's fingers tightened on the railing. "What are you saying?" Zara sniffed. He came yesterday. Said he was tired of your mood swings, of your high standards. Told me he needed someone more and I couldn't say no. Amina's mouth went dry. Her knees threatened to buckle. You betrayed me. I'm sorry, Zara sobbed, voice breaking. I didn't plan it. He was so charming. He said he loved me. He said. Amina shook her head, tears blurring the lagoon lights. You are my sister. Zara reached out. I know. I'm sorry. Amina recoiled. Get out. Zara flinched, tears spilling. Please, just listen. You listened, Amina whispered. You chose him. Zara sank to the floor, chest heaving. He said he'd marry me. We even picked dates. Amina's mind spun. Zara stood, fumbling with her phone. She handed it to Amina, a photo of Chaik and Zara, arms entwined, grins wide. Behind them, the arch of Lekiakoyi Bridge glowed. In one corner of the screen, a preview of an e-invite. Zara and Chaik. Our wedding, June 15th. You're invited. Amina stared at the screen, ball rising in her throat. Her best friend, the woman who knew her secrets, was planning a mockery of her heart. Zara's whispered plea drifted across the balcony. I never meant to. Amina stepped back, voice hollow. Don't say anything more. She turned and fled into the night, leaving Zara crumpled on the floor, the lagoon's lights mocking her betrayal. Rain began to fall in heavy drops as Amina crossed Herbert Macaulay Road, each step splashing through puddles. Back at her apartment, she ransacked her wardrobe. One suitcase, a few essentials, her late mother's locket, 2 dresses, her proof of teaching credentials, notebooks filled with lesson plans. She tossed in her phone charger and a small flashlight. Her tears had dried into a hollow ache. She typed a single message to Aunt Kemi, her mother's younger sister in Ogun State. Auntie, please help me. I'm coming. She packed the last item, Zara's wedding invitation, crisp and mocking, folded flat, and slid it between 2 shirts. At 11 p.m., she hailed a cab to the Ojota bus terminal. The rain tapped on the windshield in staccato rhythm. I need a ticket to Ijebuode tonight, she told the driver, voice low. He nodded, eyes sympathetic. It's late, but you'll catch a bus. Inside the terminal, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rows of battered benches held weary travelers murmuring in Yoruba and Pidgin. Amina approached the counter. Bus to Ijebuode? The attendant glanced at the departure board. Midnight. Last one. 2,500 Nigerian nairas. Amina fumbled for cash. Every note felt too heavy. She paid and received a printed ticket. The rainstorm battered the windows as she boarded a green and white coach. The driver nodded once, eyes stern. Amina found a window seat near the back. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass as the bus lurched forward, brakes squealing. Through the streaked window, she watched Lagos slip behind her. The tangled grid of streetlights, the echoing horns, the shadows of high walls hiding opulent mansions. A fellow passenger, a middle-aged man in a dusty bata, leaned over. You okay, miss? She startled, then caught her reflection in the window. Ringed eyes, pale face. She managed a small nod. Just tired. He offered a half smile. Long journey. Rain doesn't help. Amina swallowed. Yes. He leaned back, closing his eyes. The bus rattled along the expressway, windscreen wipers casting brief glimmers on her knuckles. With each mile, her chest eased, Lagos's bright cruelty fading into the hush of night. She clasped her mother's locket, feeling its reassuring weight. Aunt Kemi's compound lay beyond Ijebuode, in Ogun's rolling hills, under starlight and mango trees. A place where childhood memories rippled like gentle breezes. As the bus roared through unlit roads, Amina closed her eyes. Each mile carried her further from betrayal, closer to a refuge she hoped would mend her shattered heart. At dawn, the coach eased into the dusty terminal of Ijebuode. Amina disembarked, legs stiff from the long ride. She waited beside a cluster of tricycles, Kiki Marwa, until one driver motioned her over. To Ojalegba Junction? She nodded, and they rattled off toward the outskirts, red earth kicking up behind them. The city gave way to farmland, cassava patches, cocoa trees, small compounds shaded by mango trees. At last, they emerged at a weathered gate, faded blue paint flaking from wooden posts. Aunt Kemi appeared, arms open. She wore a simple wrapper and headscarf, eyes bright with relief. "My child," she exclaimed, drawing Amina into an embrace. "You're safe now." Amina's knees buckled against the gate. "Auntie," her voice cracked. Inside the compound, hens scratched at scraps and goats bleated from a corral. A small clay house stood beneath guava trees. Neighbors emerged to greet her. Mrs. Ade, the schoolteacher. Uncle Beo, the village mechanic, children squealing as they darted around her legs. They pressed bowls of pap and akra into her hands. "Eat, eat," they urged. "You look worn." Aunt Kemi guided her to a cool, thatched roof room. A single bed with crisp white sheets waited. Amina sank into it, the mattress firm but welcoming. Outside, roosters crowed. The scent of burning firewood drifted through the window. Over the next days, Amina moved like a ghost through the compound. Each morning, Aunt Kemi rose at dawn to fetch water from the well. Amina accompanied her, drawing the bucket and treading the stones slick with moss. In the market at Ojalegba Junction, neighbors recognized her. "Is that Amina, the one Chike humiliated?" they whispered. "She has a right to weep." Some shook their heads in sympathy. Others muttered under their breath. "Serves her right, marrying a Lagos man." Amina held her head high, but the words stung. Guilt mingled with shame. How had she not seen the cracks in Chike's charm? Why had Zara betrayed her? At night, she lay on the thin mattress, unable to still her mind. Aunt Kemi would slip in and press hot tea to her lips. "Sleep, my child. Tomorrow, we begin to heal." A day later, she ventured beyond the compound to the dusty footpath leading to the primary school where Aunt Kemi taught. The children, in crisp green uniforms, paused in their lessons to wave. Amina offered shy smiles, then ducked into a nearby grove of banana trees, letting tears fall unseen. Between sobs, she alerted herself. "You're safe. Here, they care." Returning home, she found Aunt Kemi kneading dough for fufu. The familiar rhythm soothed her. Gently, her aunt guided her through pounding in the wooden mortar. With each pound, press out the hurt. Amina pressed the pestle down, then up, again and again, until her arms ached. When she tasted the soft, fragrant swallow, she found a small spark of peace. Sunday morning dawned clear as Amina joined Aunt Kemi and neighbors at the roadside worship under a cluster of tamarind trees. A patched tarpaulin served as a makeshift tent. Wooden benches faced a platform of planks. Women in bright wrappers, men in crisp shirts, children perched on laps. The congregation spilled into the dirt yard. The preacher, Pastor Daniel, a lean man with gentle eyes, lifted his Bible. "This morning, we celebrate new beginnings. God meets us in the wilderness to restore our souls." Amina shifted, the sunlight warm on her shoulders. She watched as worshippers lifted voices in praise songs, "Oloran Maasimi," "Redeemer, you reign." Their hands raised like birds in flight. When the song ended, Pastor Daniel scanned the crowd. "Any testimonies?" "God is ready to heal." A hush fell. Then, a woman named Mrs. Ade stood and spoke of a husband reclaimed from addiction. Another, a teenage girl, shared a scholarship miracle. Amina's throat tightened. Pastor Daniel smiled. "Who will share next?" Amina's pulse hammered. She rose on unsteady legs. Heads turned, curiosity flickered in the congregation. She gripped the wooden railing. I have a testimony." Her voice quavered. "Last week, my fiancé humiliated me in public and left me for my best friend. My heart broke." Sniffing, she continued. "I fled my home, boarded a midnight bus, came here to my aunt's. I felt worthless." Tears pricked her eyes. She took a breath. "But God sent me a family in this village. He's held me in the hands of neighbors who care. Today, I stand before you not in shame, but in hope." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then, a soft piano riff began, the worship band transitioning into a hymn. Pastor Daniel stepped aside. "Sing, sister." Amina's mouth trembled. She closed her eyes. The first note cracked, uncertain, raw, but then the melody found her. Her voice rose, clear and strong. Ebenezer, seen me through. Thy word my hope will renew. The congregation hushed, drawn into the fragile beauty of her tone. Villagers wept openly, children sat silent, rapt. By the time she reached the chorus, her voice soared, affirming, "O ye storms of life, be still. His promise holds me in his will." When she finished, applause thundered, a chorus of hands slapping benches and hollers of "Amen." Amina's tears flowed free, but they were tears of release. She felt the weight lift from her chest. After the service, Pastor Daniel embraced her. "You have a gift. Don't hide it." A kindly woman pressed a bundle of fabric into her arms. "Wrap yourself in this," she said. "It's from the church." Amina smiled, heart swelling. For the first time since Lekki Market, she believed in tomorrow. As she walked back to Aunt Kemi's compound, past fields of cassava, under a sky brushed with late-morning gold, she carried a new song in her soul and the certainty that her voice, once broken, would now heal. The sun had just begun its climb over the orange roofs of Aunt Kemi's compound when a lanky courier arrived, balancing a gilded envelope on his palm. Amina, still in her night wrapper, stepped into the courtyard, blinking against the sudden brightness. "Madam," the courier said, voice polite but curious, "this came for you." He extended the envelope, its edges trimmed in gold filigree, the paper thick and heavy. On the front, in elegant script, "Chaik and Zara. You're invited." Amina's breath caught. She took the envelope with trembling fingers. The courier bowed and retreated, leaving her alone before the compound gate, the morning birds silent in anticipation. She glanced at Aunt Kemi, who had followed her outside. "What is it?" Kemi asked, concern creasing her brow. Amina's throat closed. She peeled back the flap and withdrew a card the size of her palm. In swirling calligraphy, it read, "Please join us at our wedding, to celebrate our love, and to see the woman who once shamed me smile again." The words stabbed her like broken glass. She crumpled the card in her fist, the ornate paper cutting into her palm. Aunt Kemi reached for the card. "What?" Amina swallowed, voice flat. "They want me to attend, to mock me." She threw the card to the dusty earth, where it fluttered like a wounded bird. Kemi's eyes flashed. She crouched and retrieved the card, smoothing it on her knee. "Chaik and Zara think this is a joke. They've underestimated you." Amina sank onto the low step. "I don't know if I can face him again, especially with her by his side." Kemi lifted her granddaughter's chin. Her voice was gentle steel. "This insult, the invitation, it's a challenge. They want you afraid. But you're safe here, loved here." She pointed to the broken card. "We will decide how to answer." That evening, lanterns sputtered to life around the courtyard. Amina sat at the wooden table where Kemi spread out ink and paper. "I can't just ignore it," Amina said. "I need to respond." Kemi dipped a quill. "Not with words. With action." She sketched an outline of Chaik's family compound on a scrap of paper. "If you go with purpose. And you will not go alone." Amina's pulse quickened, a mix of fear and fierce resolve. Outside, the cassava leaves whispered in the night breeze. Something was shifting in the air. And in that moment, Amina knew she would not be bait for their cruelty. She would turn their mockery into her moment of triumph. Dawn broke in bruised purple and gold as Amina and Aunt Kemi sat beneath the old mango tree, steaming cups of zobo tea warming their hands. The air smelled of dew and fresh yams drying in the sun. Kemi spread spoons of tea leaves on an upturned crate. "Tell me every detail," she said. "Every word on the card, every betrayal in Zara's messages." Amina recounted the insult in Lekki Market, the late-night revelation from Zara, the mocking invitation. Her voice wavered at first, then hardened. Kemi listened quietly, nibbling a akara. "When he humiliated you," Kemi said, "he thought he wielded power. Now we'll turn that power against him." She drew circles around key points on the compound sketch. The gate, the study, the chapel. "You'll need evidence. Hard proof of his betrayal and theft." Amina's eyes flared. "I found Zara's WhatsApp logs. She confessed he'd been planning with her for months." Kemi nodded.
Good.
But words alone won't stop him. We need visuals, documents. She tapped the sketch near the servants' entrance. That's your way in. Amina leaned forward. But I can't just wander in. I need cover. Kemi smiled. Morning's planner at the market mentioned a lifestyle blogger coming to cover Zara's bridal shower. Borrow her invitation. She pulled a folded note from her wrapper. I met the tailor's niece. She's happy to lend you her invitation as a media guest. Amina exhaled. So, I pose as a blogger, take photos, then slip into the study? Exactly. Kemi's eyes glittered with pride. You'll wear my old lace blouse and wrap your hair differently. No one will recognize you. Amina sipped her tea. And what about cameras? Kemi patted her shoulder. I've arranged with Ejiro, your cousin in Lagos, to loop the CCTV feed for 10 minutes. Enough for you to enter the study undetected. Amina rose, shadow and sunlight dancing across her face. Then we have one shot. Kemi stood too, pressing a hand to her granddaughter's cheek. At sunrise, we begin. By mid-morning the next day, Amina found herself in a cramped internet cafe on Allen Avenue. The walls narrowing with screens, the hum of processors filled the room as young men tapped fervently at keyboards. Sunlight splayed through grimy windows, illuminating dust motes like tiny dancers. Ejiro sat at a corner desk, fingers flying across the keys of a laptop adorned with stickers. Hack the planet. Code like a girl. She pushed her glasses up her nose and grinned. You're cutting it close, she muttered, pulling up a command prompt. Amina dropped into the seat beside her, wrapping her borrowed lace blouse around her shoulders. I need those WhatsApp logs decrypted. Zara's admissions, time-stamped, unalterable. Ejiro's fingers stilled, then flew again. I extracted them from your backup. Now, let's crack the encryption. Lines of green code scrolled down the screen. Every so often, Ejiro paused, adjusted a parameter, then hit enter. Amina watched the scrolling text, sweat beading at her temples. A visitor approached to pay for time. Ejiro slid a tiny flash drive under the desk and handed it to Amina. Here, she whispered. All the logs, complete transcripts, voice notes, timestamps. Amina slipped the drive into her pocket. Ejiro frowned. You realize if someone sees this. Amina nodded. That's why I have only 10 minutes in the compound. After that, we loop the cameras back. Ejiro smirked. You're crazy, but I like it. She hopped down and pressed a button beside her desk. Okay, final step. We embed the logs into a hidden file system to avoid detection if they scan drives. Within minutes, it was done. Amina held the tiny drive, her heart in her throat. Thank you, she said. Ejiro clapped her on the shoulder. Just don't mention me if you end up in court. Amina laughed despite herself. Deal. She pushed her chair back, adjusted the scarf around her head, and slipped from the cafe, her mission reborn by code and courage. That evening, Amina boarded a Danfo bus bound for Lagos. The city lights flickered on as the skyline drew nearer. Lit billboards, glittering high-rises, the pulse of traffic like a living artery. She pressed her palm to the window, steadying her breathing. A conductor called out stops in rapid pidgin English. Passengers jostled to disembark. Amina slipped into a taxi at Ojuelegba, giving the driver Zara's borrowed invitation. Media guest, lifestyle launch for Zara Adebayo. The driver nodded, navigating the maze of side streets. They arrived at a gated enclave, cream-painted walls topped with wrought iron spikes. A security guard in crisp uniform let them in after a cursory glance at the invitation. The taxi pulled up before a sprawling mansion, columns, arched windows, a sweeping driveway lined with bougainvillea. Amina paused, adjusting her borrowed designer sunglasses. She stepped out, clipboard in hand, phone camera ready. The guard saluted and ushered her through double doors into a grand foyer. Crystal chandeliers glinted overhead. Marble floors reflected her reflection, unrecognizable in the borrowed blouse and head wrap. She moved through the corridors, eyes scanning names on leather-bound guest books. A friendly event planner approached, clipboard bristling with sticky notes. Welcome. You must be Amina, our media guest. Amina returned a polite smile. Thank you. I'm here to cover Zara's upcoming bridal launch. The planner offered a guided tour, the garden set for the shower, the pavilion festooned with ribbons. Amina drew her phone from her pocket and began snapping discreet photos, angles of the tables, close-ups of the floral arrangements, glimpses of the table cards, drinks courtesy of Viralvideo Holdings. As they passed an alcove, two men in suits conferred over a laptop. Amina feigned interest. Mind if I photograph your arrangement? She asked, raising her phone. One man looked up, startled, then returned to glancing at spreadsheets on the screen, projected budgets for the wedding, line items exceeding ₦1,000,000 per category. Amina's pulse quickened. She zoomed in, capturing the figures. Beautiful work, she said, backing away. The men barely registered her before returning to their discussion. The planner led her into the terrace, where guests sipped sparkling juice and nibbled canapes. Amina smiled and nodded at passing dignitaries, all the while slipping the encrypted drive from her pocket to her handbag. Suddenly, a bridesmaid approached, Zara's cousin from Abuja, dressed in sapphire. Lovely to have media coverage, she said, voice cool. Will you be here tomorrow for the rehearsal? Amina folded her arms. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. Her voice was steady, but her heart hammered. She caught the cousin's eye, uncertain, perhaps suspicious, but the cousin nodded and glided away. With the pretense intact, Amina moved toward the study corridor. The looped cameras gave her 10 minutes, but even so, each second felt borrowed. She inhaled and stepped into the hush of polished mahogany and velvet curtains, edges of evidence waiting to be seized. The study door closed with a soft click behind Amina. The hush inside was complete. Heavy leather-bound books, a mahogany desk laden with paperwork, and the faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. She scanned the shelves, binders stamped personal, finance, real estate. Her hand trembled as she opened the personal binder. Inside were copies of the WhatsApp logs, Zara's confessions, cost projections for the lavish wedding, receipts paid directly from Amina's joint account. She slid them into a folder labeled Exposé. She moved to the desk, rifling through drawers until she found the slim ledger book embossed with the Viralvideo family crest. Its pages detailed transfers from a client savings account, her own name among them. She flipped the pages, eyes widening at the entries. Dates corresponded to months she and Chaik had been engaged. Camera clicking softly in her bag, she took photos of each incriminating page. The more damning, the better. Her pulse thundered. Sweat beaded her brow. A sudden footstep in the hallway froze her blood. She snapped the notebook closed and pushed her hair behind her ear as the guard's booted foot passed the door frame. The loop held. Seconds later, the guard's silhouette retreated. Amina exhaled, grabbing the exposé folder and tucking it into her bag. She double-checked the encrypted drive from Ajiro, nearly lost but intact. She straightened her borrowed blouse, smoothed her head wrap, and squared her shoulders. Back in the grand hall, she rejoined the party, posing for photos with other media guests. No one suspected the folder nestled in her satchel. She smiled at a passing photographer. Great light here. Moments later, the cameras blinked back to life. Security cameras resumed recording. But by then, Amina was already descending the marble steps and stepping onto the driveway, heart pounding with triumph. Outside, the cool evening air greeted her. She slipped into a waiting taxi, handing the driver a crisp note. Take me home. As the city lights blurred past, Amina exhaled. Her cloak of deception had worked. She carried in her bag the proof that would topple Chaik's empire of lies, turning his mockery into the catalyst for his downfall. Night in Lagos was a velvet cloak pierced by neon. The Viralvideo mansion loomed under its glare, silent and solemn. Inside, ivory pillars and marble floors reflected the hush of luxury. Amina slipped from the taxi, heart drumming in her ears. Beside her, Funmi, and tucked under Funmi's arm, Aunt Kemi, shared the single flash drive and the dossier of digital logs. They moved like phantoms through the servants' gate, past a lone guard dozing on a plastic chair. Funmi offered him a nod. Aunt Kemi pressed a handful of naira into his hand. He stirred, dropped the money into his pocket, and groaned, "Enjoy the party, madams," before kicking his sandals back on. Inside the compound, The scent of jasmine drifted from manicured gardens. Amina recalled Kemi's sketch of the mansion's layout as they trod the gravel path toward the study wing. She pressed the flash drive into her jeans pocket and swallowed. Funmi knocked softly on the study door. A muffled voice, perhaps a butler's, gave no answer. Funmi tried the handle. Unlocked. The room glowed under a large Tiffany lamp. Mahogany bookshelves curved overhead, lined with leather-bound volumes and gilt-edged ledgers. A massive desk sat center, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Aunt Kemi clicked on a small key to the flash drive port and plugged in her laptop. The screen flickered, then displayed the WhatsApp transcripts and voice notes. Zara's confession, time-stamped promises, proof of the months-long plot. Amina crept to the shelves, scanning spines. Her fingers found the ledger, brown, embossed with Adebayo Holdings. She slid it off the shelf and onto the desk. Its pages crackled as she opened to the first entry. Client savings account, Amina Okafor, Nigeria Naira 250,000 withdrawal. She flipped through dozens of entries, every month, every Naira siphoned. A silence fell, heavy with betrayal. She snapped photos of each page with her phone, careful to catch dates and signatures. Funmi glanced at the laptop. Files transferred. They wove between columns and rows of transactions, gala expenses, catering costs, designer gowns, all billing back to Amina's account. A sudden creak outside made them freeze. Aunt Kemi tapped her watch. We have 2 minutes left before the CCTV loop resets. Amina slid the ledger back onto the shelf, leaving no trace of disturbance. Funmi yanked the flash drive. Let's go. They retraced their steps, hearts lodged in their throats. As they slipped through the back gate, the mansion's grand facade seemed to waver under the streetlights. Amina tensed until the guard's snore confirmed their escape. 10 minutes later, in the safety of a borrowed car, Amina exhaled so hard her shoulders shook. The evidence was real, physical and digital. With it, she could shatter Chaik's empire of lies. The next step loomed, choosing her battlefield. August sun beat down on Victoria Island as guests flowed into the ivory-pillared cathedral. Cars of every hue lined the marble steps, sleek SUVs, glistening sedans. Inside, crystal chandeliers showered light onto coral-carpeted aisles. Amina sat in a borrowed seat near the back, the flash drive clutched in her palm. Funmi perched beside her, palette of phone cameras at the ready. Aunt Kemi hovered near the exit, prepared to deliver the dossier if the moment called. Chioma entered on her father's arm, a vision in ivory lace. Her smile shone under the vaulted ceiling, where organ music swelled. Tund, regal in a midnight blue suit, glanced at the congregation, then at Chioma, his expression both proud and nervous. Reverend Okoye ascended the pulpit, eyes sweeping the room. Dearly beloved, his voice echoed as he launched into the ceremony's opening. Guests leaned forward, hungry for romance. A giant screen displayed the couple's pre-wedding shoot, Chioma laughing in a daisy field, Tund gazing adoringly. Amina's chest tightened. She fingered the flash drive, mind racing. Aunt Kemi's whispered cue came. Wait for, I do. Then he'll hand you the drive. The couple exchanged rings. Tund slipped the band onto Chioma's finger. She closed her eyes, tears of joy brimming. The pastor cleared his throat. By the power vested in me. In that instant, before he could say, I now pronounce you, Reverend Okoye paused, raising a hand. Heads turned, murmurs rose. The pastor held up an envelope, stark white against his black robe. This is not part of my sermon, he said, voice low but carrying. But I received urgent documents regarding this union. He unfolded them, bank statements, transcripts, ledger snapshots. These papers allege that Mr. Tund Adebayo has misappropriated over 2 million Nigerian nairas from his Amina Okafor's account. A ripple of shock raced through the cathedral. Chioma's bouquet slipped from her grasp. Petals fluttered to the carpet. Tund's face went ashen. Guests gasped, leaning to whisper. A skyscraper of quiet shattered under the weight of truth. Reverend Okoye read aloud the critical lines. The ledger entries he'd verified personally, the screenshots of Zara's voice notes confessing the betrayal. I present these for your judgment. Tund sprang forward. This is false. A setup. His voice cracked, his composure fractured. Chioma staggered back, eyes wide. "Chike," she whispered, clutching her father's arm. Some guests rose in anger, others in disbelief. A handful brandished smartphones, capturing every moment as live feeds streamed worldwide. The cathedral doors swung open as security moved to escort Tund away. Chioma collapsed onto a pew, sobbing. In the stunned hush, Amina rose. Cameras pivoted toward her like satellite dishes. She stepped forward, each footfall echoing on marble. Funmi's camera stayed, trained on her. "It's true." Amina's voice rang clear. "He stole my savings. He humiliated me. And he betrayed us all." A dead silence followed. Reverend Okoye lowered the documents. "Let justice be done." Outside, the hurricane of gossip had already begun. But inside, a woman who'd been mocked now stood at the altar, and the ground trembled beneath her. The moment the pastor stepped down, a tidal wave of commotion engulfed the cathedral. Guests yanked out phones. Someone shouted, "Call the police." Chike's family rose as one, faces pale. The bride's cousins swarmed beside Chioma, trying to shield her. Amid the chaos, Amina marched up the aisle, the stolen ledger's pages in her hand. She paused before the stunned couple, her chest heaving. "Zara, look at me." Zara, clad in bridesmaid's green, froze mid-step, pale, eyes glistening. She clutched her shawl, as if to shield her shame. Chike's jaw tightened. "You have no right." Amina lifted the ledger. "I have every right. You destroyed my life. You humiliated me in Lekki Market, then ran away with my best friend." Her voice trembled with righteous fury. "And you thought you could celebrate your happiness while I watched?" She cleared her throat. "Not today." The congregation pressed closer. Journalists' microphones thrust toward her face. A camera crew from a local news station hurried forward. Amina took a breath, raising her voice. "To every woman who's been betrayed, shamed, or silenced, this is for you." She handed the ledger to a stunned usher, who passed it to the pastor. Then she turned to Chike. "Apologize." Chike's eyes darted, fury, shame, panic colliding. He opened his mouth, but only a croak emerged. I'm sorry." Chioma stood, tears streaming. "Sorry? You stole from her, from me, from all of us." She raised her voice, trembling. "I refuse to be your victim." Her words unleashed a roar. Guests cried shame and lock him up. Security guards hustled Chike toward the doors. A bridal attendant wrapped Chioma's shawl around her shoulders. Amina felt Funmi's hand on her back. "Let's go," Funmi hissed. But Amina stayed, lifted her chin. Cameras lingered on her face, the woman who transformed humiliation into power. As she walked out, petals and tissues scattered behind her, a path of vindication lit by every flashbulb. Outside the cathedral, the Lagos sun seemed too bright, too startling after the gloom within. A cluster of bridesmaids, clutching bouquets, huddled on the marble steps. Zara, once poised and proud, now trembled in the arms of her cousin. Her green dress stained with tears and fallen petals. Amina descended the steps, the stolen ledger now secure in Funmi's purse. She paused when she saw Zara half-crouched, shoulders shaking. Guilt and sorrow warred in Zara's eyes. Amina drew in a steady breath. "Zara." Zara's head snapped up, tear tracks glistening. "Ami, I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "He told me your love was suffocating you, said you were too proud." Amina's throat ached, the betrayal wound fresh and raw. But she knelt beside Zara, offering a handkerchief. "You believed him, but you have to believe this. You're not your mistakes." Zara dropped her gaze. "I lost everything, my friend, my fiancé." Amina placed a gentle hand on Zara's shoulder. "Then let this be your beginning. We find redemption together." Zara's tears fell faster. "I don't deserve." "You deserve forgiveness," Amina said quietly. "Not from me, only from yourself." Slowly, Zara buried her face in Amina's shoulder. Cousins and attendants stood back, witnessing the fragile reconnection. Cameras hovered, but no one spoke. Even journalists sensed they had glimpsed something real. Two women healing in the shadow of wreckage. After a long moment, Zara wiped her cheeks. "Help me," she whispered. "Help me make this right." Amina nodded. "We will." Together, they rose, silhouettes defined by resilience rather than ruin. By sunset, the scandal had exploded across screens and airwaves. TV anchors replayed the altar confrontation in endless loops. Social media feeds trended hashtag Amina takes back and hashtag shame on Chike. Adebayo holding sponsors, luxury brands, telecom giants, released statements distancing themselves from Tund. On Victoria Island's glimmering waterfront, yachts passed under the bridge as dockside bars buzzed with conversations. Reporters from 3 stations converged outside Chioma's family home, microphones thrust forward. Amina and Funmi arrived at a small beachfront cafe, the ordinance of evening breezes and salt tang a welcome relief. They sat beneath strings of lanterns, sipping hibiscus cocktails. Their phones buzzed with good news texts. Donations to Sisters of Dignity had doubled. Local radio invited Amina for a feature. A women's shelter asked her to speak at their annual gala. Funmi grinned. "You did it." Amina's eyes brightened in the lantern light. "We did it." She raised her glass. "To every woman who finds her voice." A text notification interrupted. Adebayo Holdings official statement. "We regret the actions of Mr. Tund Adebayo and are committed to full cooperation with authorities." Amina reread the line and exhaled, relief and triumph mingling in her chest. "They're falling like dominoes." Funmi linked her arm through Amina's. "What now?" Amina gazed at the dark river, lights glittering across its surface. "Now we build." She opened her own note app. Plan launch, Sisters of Dignity, workshop, financial literacy, self-defense, legal aid. Aunt Kemi joined them, her face alight with pride. "My granddaughter," she said softly, "you turned their poison into medicine." Amina rested her head on Kemi's shoulder. "Let's heal together, every woman who's ever been mocked." Under the glittering city lights of Victoria Island, 3 generations shared a moment of victory, from betrayal's abyss to empowerment's dawn. The scandal's fallout was far from over, but as long as Amina stood, no insult could ever silence her roar. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the small conference room at the back of the cafe on Broad Street. Folding chairs circled a battered wooden table, each one occupied by a face brimming with hope and trepidation. Amina stood at the head of the table, clasping her hands, as Aunt Kemi and Funmi flanked her. "Welcome," Amina began, voice steady. "You are the first members of Sisters of Dignity, not just an NGO, but a covenant of solidarity. Today, we build safe spaces for every woman who's ever been silenced." A murmur of agreement rose from the circle. Women of all ages shifted in their seats, a schoolteacher clutching her satchel, a market trader with calloused hands, a university student nervously tapping her notebook. Funmi leaned forward. "We'll start with financial literacy, because control over money is control over life. But we'll also offer legal aid, counseling, and self-defense classes." A woman in a bright geli raised her hand. "What about storage for our children's belongings? When we escape abusive homes, we have nowhere to keep our things." Aunt Kemi smiled warmly. "Next week, we open a storage facility in Ojulegba, where you can store essentials free of charge. We're funded by private donors, no government strings attached." Amina glanced around the room. "But today, let's share stories. Who'd like to begin?" After a moment's hesitation, the schoolteacher, Mrs. Adekunle, cleared her throat. I taught at a secondary school. My husband took my meager salary, leaving me with nothing. I hid it from my students so they wouldn't know. Every morning, I walked the corridors pretending life was fine. But inside, I was drowning." Tears welled in her eyes. Amina moved to stand beside her. "You're not drowning anymore. We are here to help you swim." Mrs. Adekunle wiped her cheeks and inhaled sharply. "Thank you." A younger woman, barely 19, spoke next. "My boyfriend, he locked me out when I missed his family event. I had nowhere to go and spent the night by the roadside. I lost my phone, my wallet. I thought I lost myself." Funmi handed her a tissue. "You are found," she said gently. And we will help you get a replacement ID, phone, and a safe place to stay. The circle continued, each testimony kindling collective resolve. When the last woman shared, a mother of 3 who had fled with only her children's clothes, Amina rose again. Tomorrow, she declared, we launch our first workshop, Budgeting 101. We'll meet here at 9 a.m. Spread the word. Invite every sister in need. As the meeting broke up, women hugged, exchanged numbers, and walked out into the busy street with lighter hearts. Amina, Funmi, and Aunt Kemi lingered, surveying the empty chairs. Aunt Kemi patted the table. They came because they saw you stand in that cathedral. Now you stand for them. Funmi grinned. And Monday, we transform hope into action. Amina closed her eyes, letting the morning light warm her face. The alliance of sisters had begun, and with it, the true work of healing and transformation. At exactly 6 p.m. that Tuesday, the neon on air sign blinked red in the cramped booth at Play FM Studios on Broad Street. Amina adjusted her headphones, her mother's bronze rising sun pendant resting against her blouse. In her hand, a well-worn script flickered under the green glow of a desk lamp. Beside her, the station manager, Mr. Alumide, nodded. 5 minutes, he said into the mic, get ready. In the control room, Funmi and Aunt Kemi leaned over the desk, fanning through call logs and demonstration slides. The studio door clicked shut. Silence fell. Amina took a deep breath. Through the headphone cushion, she could hear the faint murmur of callers on hold. She pressed the microphone's foam cover and cleared her throat. Good evening, Lagos, she began, voice smooth yet warm. You're listening to Play FM, and this is Voice of Amina, where we turn whispers of shame into roars of dignity. Tonight's topic, financial independence as self-respect. She paused, letting the title sink in. Let me tell you a story. Last month, I sat in a cathedral, watching my ex-fiancé's wedding crumble under the weight of his own lies. It was painful, humiliating. But I chose to take that shame and use it to forge a new path, for me and for every woman who's ever been told she's worthless. A beep echoed. The first caller clicked on. Play FM. Turn to line 1. Amina smiled. Welcome to Voice of Amina. Who's speaking? A hesitant female voice answered. Good evening, Amina. I'm Chitra. I'm 28, a single mother, and I've been staying with my in-laws because I can't afford a flat. Chitra's confession unfolded. She'd fled domestic abuse, but without income or savings, had nowhere else to go. Amina's heart clenched. Chitra, Amina said, you are not defined by your circumstances. At Sisters of Dignity, we offer microgrants to get you your own place. Email us at sistersofdignity@ang. We'll help you apply. A wave of relief echoed through Chitra's words. Thank you so much. Beep, another caller. Line 2. This time, a student named Aoife spoke of pressure to pay for her school fees by becoming a sugar baby. Tears shone in her voice as she confessed. Amina listened without judgment. Iffy, she said when Aoife had finished, your body is not currency. If you send me your contact, we have scholarship funds and volunteer tutoring positions. You deserve dignity, not debt. A chorus of grateful replies flowed through the line. Behind the glass, Funmi monitored the listener engagement graph climbing. Aunt Kemi dabbed at her eyes, pride ringing in her smile. For the next hour, Amina navigated tiresome stereotypes and taboo subjects, menstrual hygiene, emotional abuse, savings plans, interweaving her personal anecdotes. She described her flight from Lagos, her healing under her aunt's care, and her mission to transform pain into purpose. At 7 p.m., the show drew to a close. The last caller thanked her for speaking about that insult. Amina's private moment turned public trauma and adding, now I call it my superpower. As the off-air sign lit up, Amina exhaled, relief and exhilaration mingling. She stood, rubbing her temples. Mr. Alumide entered, clapping softly. You've changed lives tonight, Amina. Funmi flung her arms around her. That was incredible. Aunt Kemi pressed her cheek against Amina's. Your voice, your power, will carry this movement forward. Outside, Play FM's lobby buzzed as staff congratulated Amina. Her phone overflowed with texts, success stories, offers of partnerships, invitations to speak. When she finally stepped into the night air, the street lamps glowed like beacons, signals that her voice would no longer be silenced. 2 months later, the headquarters of Sisters of Dignity had outgrown the back room of a cafe. The new office, a converted townhouse in Ojuelegba, hummed with activity, a kitchenette stocked with tea and biscuits, a small library of donated self-help books, and cubicles where volunteers answered helpline calls. Amina unlocked the red front door and stepped inside, welcomed by the familiar sense of chamomile tea and printer ink. At her desk, Funmi sorted through stacks of binders, while Aunt Kemi greeted each incoming visitor with a steady warmth. "Good morning, Mrs. Lanra," Aunt Kemi said. "Your caseworker will see you shortly." Mrs. Lanra, a soft-spoken seamstress, had come to enroll in the financial literacy course. Across the room, a tall police officer in plain clothes conferred with a legal advisor from the NGO's pro bono lawyers. Amina slid into her chair as Funmi waved her over. "You've got 5 minutes before the press arrives," she said, tapping a schedule posted on the wall. Amina smoothed her blouse and joined Funmi at the front reception. They stood before a banner, Sisters of Dignity, Empowerment Through Knowledge. At exactly 10 a.m., camera shutters clicked. Reporters from national TV and newspapers crowded the foyer. Amina stepped forward. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice reverberating in the hallway. "Today marks the launch of our second center here in Lagos, serving 200 women monthly. We offer workshops in budgeting, legal rights, and personal safety, and we're expanding into vocational training next quarter." A reporter held up her microphone. "Miss Okafor, why did you choose this location?" Amina glanced at the pattern of women entering, teachers, traders, students. Ojuelegba is a crossroads of commerce and community. It represents the perseverance of Lagos women. We are here to meet them where they are and equip them for what comes next. Another voice piped in. "What about funding? How do you sustain your programs?" Amina pointed to the volunteer lawyers and fundraisers in the crowd. "We rely on grants from international partners, donations from local businesses, and the small income from our social enterprise, Sistercrafts, where women sell handcrafted goods." She gestured to a display of woven baskets and beaded jewelry. Each purchase directly funds another workshop. Flashes lit the scene as she concluded. "From the ashes of humiliation we rebuild. Not just for me, but for the countless women whose voices are waiting to be heard." That afternoon, Amina toured the counseling room, where clients shared tear-stained tissues, the self-defense studio, where a group of women practiced basic kicks under the guidance of a volunteer instructor, and the legal clinic, where a young mother consulted with a lawyer about a restraining order. By dusk, she and Funmi sat on the rooftop terrace, surveying Lagos's twinkling skyline. The city hummed with promise and possibility. "We've come so far," Funmi said, "since that first meeting under the mango tree." Amina sipped her tea. "And we won't stop until every woman knows her worth." The wind carried the distant sounds of traffic, children laughing, a radio DJ mixing tunes. In that moment, Lagos itself seemed to pulse with renewed life, an echo of the transformation happening within Sisters of Dignity. It arrived on a crisp Friday morning, a single envelope, unmarked save for Amina's name in familiar handwriting. She slid it open at her desk in the Ojuelegba office. Inside lay a typed letter. "Dear Amina, I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. My actions were cowardly and cruel. I stole your savings, humiliated you, and betrayed your trust. I have dismantled my old life and set aside funds to support Sisters of Dignity's programs. I would like to meet you to discuss how best I can assist. Chike Adebayo." Amina's breath caught. She folded the letter slowly and walked down the corridor to Funmi's desk. "Chike wrote," she said, voice low. Funmi's eyes darted up, surprise flickering. Aunt Kemi emerged from the legal clinic. "He wants to help." Amina nodded. "He wants to meet, to fund programs, to make amends." Silence fell. Then Funmi spoke. "He's paying dues, but only you could decide if reconciliation, what kind, is possible." Aunt Kemi placed a hand on Amina's shoulder. "Restoring dignity isn't just about revenge. It's about justice and transformation. Amina stared at the letter. I want to do this for the women who still think they need to hide. If he's sincere, we'll help him understand the work ahead. But I won't forgive blindly. That afternoon, they drafted a response. Mr. Adebayo, thank you for your letter. I agree to meet on Tuesday at 2 p.m. in our training center. Come prepared to serve. Volunteer for 1 month under supervision. We will discuss financial reparation afterward. Tuesday arrived. At 2 p.m. sharp, Chaik stood awkwardly in the foyer of the training center, suit jacket replaced by a simple polo shirt. His eyes were guarded, regret etched in the lines around them. Amina led him to a classroom where 20 women sat awaiting their daily workshop. She pointed to a seat at the back and spoke quietly. Welcome. Today's session is on building credit and savings. You'll assist Saya, our facilitator. Chaik swallowed. A young facilitator called Saya, once a banker, now volunteering, handed him a stack of practice ledgers. He spent the next 2 hours taking notes, answering questions haltingly, helping women calculate budgets. Some participants shot curious glances, others nodded at him, as though gauging his sincerity. At midday, Amina observed from the doorway. Chaik's posture was stiff, but he persevered, smiling shyly when a woman congratulated him on finally doing something good. After the session, Amina ushered him aside. How do you feel? Chaik exhaled deeply. Humbled. I never realized how hard these women work, how every naira matters. He reached into his pocket, producing a check. Here's an initial donation, Nigeria Naira 500,000. Use it for supplies, stipends, whatever you need. Amina met his gaze. Thank you. But real reparation is ongoing commitment. Tomorrow, you help at the shelter, moving donated items. Saturday, you assist in legal clinics. Chaik nodded. I understand. I'm ready. Amina extended her hand. Then welcome back to the world you tried to destroy. May this be the first of many right steps. He grasped her hand with both of his. Thank you for giving me a chance. The first light of dawn painted Lagos in rose and gold as Amina stepped onto the stage set up outside Play FM's rooftop studio for a live broadcast. A gentle breeze carried the laughter of early risers buying Accra below. The hum of traffic began to stir. Banners fluttered. Voice of Amina, Live Outside Broadcast and Sisters of Dignity, 1-year anniversary. A canopy sheltered a modest audience of volunteers, beneficiaries, journalists, and a few dignitaries. Funmi handed Amina a cup of ginger tea. Aunt Kemi stood at the soundboard, adjusting knobs. Chaik arrived, volunteer badge pinned to his polo, carrying boxes of supplies he'd purchased. Amina tapped the mic. The engineer nodded. A hush fell as Play FM's jingle faded, replaced by the pre-recorded heartbeat tone. Good morning, Lagos. Amina's voice rang bright. Today, we celebrate 1 year of Voice of Amina and Sisters of Dignity, a year in which thousands of women found shelter, legal counsel, and their own voices. She gestured to the audience. This is the woman who fled in shame, who faced her worst fears in that cathedral, and who rose, hand in hand with sisters across Nigeria, to transform pain into power. A cheer rose. Volunteers held up signs. We are dignity. From shame to strength. Thank you, Amina. Chaik stepped forward, clearing his throat. I'm here today not as a savior, but as an apprentice in humility, he said. And as a sponsor of this anniversary event. My daughter, born last month, will benefit from your maternal workshops. Thank you for teaching me what respect truly means. Amina nodded. Beneath her smiles, she felt waves of emotion, pride, relief, gratitude. She turned back to the mic. Let's hear from some of our sisters. She invited 3 women to share brief testimonies, a woman who escaped trafficking, a nurse who reclaimed her savings, a student who returned to school. Each offered heartfelt thanks. As the sun rose fully over Lagos's skyline, Amina closed the ceremony. From that crushing insult in a crowded market to this radiant dawn, my journey has been mirrored by every woman who found her worth here. We are proof that no shame can bind us when we stand together. She raised her cup. To every sister who dares to roar. A chorus of voices echoed back, to roaring. The morning light seemed to shine just a bit brighter, gilding the faces of women who had reclaimed their dignity. And as Amina looked over the crowd, Funmi cheering beside her, Aunt Kemi beaming, Chaik quietly applauding, she knew this was only the beginning of a legacy born from courage, solidarity, and unbreakable hope.
The end.